In May 2017, Minister Simonet was elected as the Member of Parliament representing the constituency of St. Anne's, Nassau, Bahamas. An alumnus of Brunel University in Middlesex, England, he graduated with a BSc with honors in law and political science. He is a barrister at law, having been called to the Bahamas Bar in 1978. Mr. Simonet is a respected and experienced politician, having served in many governmental capacities for approximately 30 years. His political career began in 1987, where he was appointed to the Senate of the Bahamas, serving in this capacity for 2 consecutive 5-year terms. In 2002, he was elected as the Member of Parliament for the Montague constituency. During his parliamentary career, he served as Minister of Tourism and Attorney General, Deputy Leader of the Free National Movement Party, Deputy Prime Minister, and Minister of Foreign Affairs and Immigration. Please help me welcome Minister Simonet.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction. I have the pleasure of being your last speaker this afternoon. So when I see only one person in the back of the room, I'll realize that's the person giving the vote of thanks. But welcome, and it is indeed a pleasure to be here this afternoon. When I received the invitation, to be very honest, I thought, why are you asking me to come and speak to you? Well, fortunately, Sonia on the way in, tried to twist my arm a little bit, as did Keith, to say that what they want us to do is have Candia Ferguson mandate in her approval process that engineers have to be consulted before it comes to people like myself on the NEC. I think that was the gist of what you were just trying to say. Then my immigration officers tell me that you want to grill me or cuss me, well, no, on the whole question of why consultants should be allowed to come in without a short-term work permit. So I think I've got the drift of where I'm supposed to start. Yes. Okay. Let me add on top of that, which you didn't grill me on the way up, the Bahamas is in the process of joining the WTO, and you're probably all scared that there will be a free movement of labor, therefore causing you more problems.
Actually, we welcome WTO.
Okay. Well, so I think it's against that background that the people who wrote my speech probably had no idea of why I was coming here, and I will not bore you with a lot of the details that are here. Let me try and address some of the issues. I have to switch, so if I use some wrong initials, I've just come back from 10 days of dealing with financial services in Europe. The world, but I use that to say the world is changing. It is becoming more open, and therefore we, as the Bahamas, are competing on a worldwide scene to try and get direct foreign investment here. Director Ferguson will tell you that she's probably hearing from me as a member of cabinet probably more than anyone else, because I'm constantly hounding her to say, why isn't that next project ready? So let's start with BIA. She spoke this morning, obviously. Investors have to come to BIA. What are we asking them to do? We're asking them to put an outline of a proposal together to show us what the investment will be, what the impact will be, what the employment will be, et cetera, et cetera. So on our way in, we're talking about what do we ask an investor, how deep do we have to go into that project? So for instance, to use a bad 4-letter word or a good 4-letter word, depends on where you stand, OBAN. Yeah, it's 4 letters. OBAN, how far should OBAN have gone with its EIAs or impact studies or whatever we want to use before they put forward a proposal? So should an investor who's going to build let's say something came up the other day, and Candy will correct me if I'm wrong, about a 50-unit condominium or building project in an area that might be a little suspect in terms of foundation. You might not hit solid rock where that project was going. Do we require that person to have come to us with an engineering diagram or plan to show that you'll use this type of foundation or that type of whatever to sustain the weight of the building. I don't think that's the role of the NEC or BIA, NEC being the National Investment Council or BIA being the Investment Authority. So to the extent that they need to show whatever they need to show is a question of economics, whether it's how many people we reckon will be employed, the type of work it's going to do, and a general broad aspect to that degree. Once approved, it's obviously approved subject to whether it's well, of course, it's a building permit, so the building department, Ministry of Works have to go and look at it. In some cases, best have to look at the whole thing to make sure it's sustained, and all of that. But it's also subject to the rules of the Bahamas. Okay. I'm not sure if Keith's already here. Keith said, so I said, well, what about a real estate agent and a lawyer? Let's pick on them, because they're easy targets, okay? I'm both, so you can pick on that as well. So that a developer coming in has already met the real estate agent because he's gone to him to find where that piece of property, I'm talking about a foreigner now, not necessarily a Bahamian, because we might have known that. He's already found the lawyer because the real estate agent took him to the lawyer. The lawyer then got him to government. Now the question is, should the government or should your organization do a better job of making that investor aware that they need your services? And I think that's probably where we were. So to the extent that the Bahamas has to make persons aware, is it the role of government or is it the role of the associations to make sure that planning has to happen? I'll be a little mischievous today. Quite often that investor has his own professionals that he relies on in his own country before he gets here. And when the Bahamian professional gets involved, as you know better than I do, where is that relationship heading? So let's take the building next door. That way. Is a good example. Okay? So how do we then say as a government, okay, I'm sorry, Mr. whoever the developer was, you have to make sure before you come to BIA that your plans are approved or drawn up or you've engaged, or whatever the right words are, engineers, architects, and mechanical engineers. So we talked also about the issue to make sure power supply is there. If you took Bahamar, of course, there had to be a new power transformers and all that other stuff done, to the road moved, etc. So that's the dilemma I'm facing as we walked in, as to where is the role of government and where is the role of the association or the professionals individually. And probably after this talk, you probably have to talk to the director of BIA and try and figure out where do we go next. So I'm not disagreeing with what Sonia was saying. I'm just trying to conceptualize how this is going to work. And maybe that's a discussion that we can have in the days to come as to where and how does the government, and can the government intercede to say at some point on the approval process, there's a process where you have to go to the BEAPP. Hope I got the initials right. And I think that's a discussion, and I'm just throwing it out there for further discussion. Then I think if I go to the Trusted Traveler program, just to move into immigration, at some point, where do I then say to the owner and his agents, no, you have to get a short-term work permit to come into the Bahamas to look at a project in order to advise a client as to what has to be done. And that's another discussion I think you can have with me and send me your ideas. Because in order to increase direct foreign investment, we have to make sure there is a fairly easy access. And one of the complaints I'm finding as I have my job is that we quite often restrict individuals coming into the Bahamas in order to try and discuss, promote, and whatever. So the role of immigration to that degree is protecting the industry, in the case of architects or wherever, engineers, but also allowing a fairly free movement of persons to come in so that they can consult, physically see the location. I mean, I've seen some ideas where they've obviously never seen the site. They've come up with some real winners that if they'd been here, and then I think against that background, we also look at it that this is someone just hacking a job, getting a permit, and going to go off and sell that idea somewhere. I better remember I'm being televised because it might get... but we know that happens. I mean, you know that happens, I know it happens, and many of you know that my previous life did involve a little bit of building. So we've got to be careful of that. Then we go in this whole issue, and unfortunately Sonia said you're welcome in the WTO. The first question the Americans asked me when I was in Geneva is, what happens if an American law firm comes to the Bahamas, sets up and hires Bahamian lawyers? Is that permissible? Now, it could be lawyers, today it's accountants, whatever. The issue that one of the things we talk about in the WTO is it is not a free movement of labor. So when we signed on to the EPA way back in 2008, we did not sign on through CARICOM to the single market economy or the free movement of labor. So this idea that someone from St. Lucia can turn up in the Bahamas, no, they need a work permit. Immigration do a fantastic job. We can do a better job. We're being computerized at the moment, and I think some of you might have been lucky. We were getting work permits out, I think in some cases, in 2 and 3 weeks. I bet you no one's had one of those, so I won't ask you to raise your hand. But the new system being computerized, it is going through quicker. Some of the ones that have been held up are a little bit more difficult. But we try through immigration to make sure that we are protecting the various industries, the various aspects, so that architects and lawyers, doctors, and so on and so forth. But we also recognize there is a demand for certain services. So for instance, if I take nurses, hopefully I won't offend anyone with nurses. There is a need for nurses here. We can't qualify enough nurses. Now, if I was to say we have enough engineers, you'd probably, if you had any food left, would be throwing it at me. But the other side, I'm going to use another part. But the other idea, also, my daughter happens to be dating an engineer. They're not married. So if my daughter was to come home, I have to find a way to give him a work permit as an engineer. Otherwise, we'll never ask some of our brilliant young children who have emigrated to come back. So these are all avenues. The better one to put it is that a lot of the fishermen have a problem with Dominicans on boats diving, but a lot of them are married to Bahamians. And these are issues, I think, when we talk on the immigration aspect, we have to continue to move through. Some concepts, some ideas are bad. If we join the WTO, no, Walmart will not be set up on number 1 Bay Street downstairs and put John Bull and Super Value out of business. That's not the idea. So therefore, when we talk to the WTO, one of the things we continue to preserve is professions that by the law of the Bahamas require a person to be a Bahamian or a permanent resident. So for instance, the engineers board, I can talk particularly, but that's where we use the accountants because it keeps it out of, but you all understand. In order for an accounting firm to sign off on a balance sheet, the partner of that firm has to be a Bahamian or a permanent resident. And I think most of your professions are protected in that way, and that cannot change under WTO. You have to respect the laws and the regulations of the engineers, the architects, the builders, so on and so forth. So I don't think you have to worry in that regard. Now the question is the way forward. Government has because the government has a number of jobs. Do we have enough Bahamians in the Bahamas with money, willing to spend, who are doing projects to keep you busy? So where are we going to get these people from? There's no question, there's no secret, it's direct foreign investment. So that's where I think I come full circle, and I'll stop for questions and answers. If we don't go out and promote, let me come back, wind back. Obviously, I go out a lot of my life and spend promoting financial services. One of the good spin-off of financial services is that a number of those institutions are actually looking for their own headquarters. And so like the other day, I was there with the opening of Capital Union Bank at the gates of Lyford Key. They've gone and they've built their own building. They've hopefully engaged all of you, and the process has gone along. So I think whilst we look at the financial services bringing those people in, we have to also look at direct foreign investment and how we can encourage them to continue building. Can we build 10 more Bahamas? I doubt it. The idea is boutique hotels on family islands. That's a good place for your industry. What also bothers me a little bit, anyway, we have to, all of us, we have a responsibility, and I'm just changing tactics here. I have signed work permits in both times I've been at immigration. And in one particular man I have in my mind, he's had 20 years of work permits, 20 consecutive work permits. He's now applied for permanent residency. He's not in the room. I think some of his bosses are there. That's what happens. There are people that came here to develop Atlantis that are still here in a different role. You know them better than I do. They came here on a work permit. They either joint ventured or they might not have joint ventured with a Bahamian. They are still here. One of the things we've done, and this is where I think you are asking me to help you put that firms on the list when they go to Ms. Ferguson at BIA, I'm asking you in my immigration hat, we have to find a way to train and make Bahamians willing to work in your industry. I am tired, I'll say it the way I want to say it, of giving out work permits for metal duct workers. I just use them because they annoy me. I mean, sorry. Because I don't see why we can't get Bahamians to do this work. Bahamians now aren't carrying the blocks, forget mixing the cement, to build the buildings. So we have to find a way to make sure we're training Bahamians and we're incentivizing them and we're making that industry an industry that we want to go into. I mean, if you look around way back when, in my day when I was growing up, there were people like Carl Trico and a number of them that started off in that construction business and did incredibly well and worked very hard at that industry. We need, you know, it was an industry to work in. A lady came to see me in my office and she said, "Boss, I've been offered $20 an hour to do sheetrock work, but I think I'm worth $26 an hour." I said, "Okay, when did you last work?" She said, "I haven't had a job for 6 months." But she wanted her $26 an hour for sheetrock work and was not prepared to take 20. I advised her to take the 20, and if you're that good, your boss will increase your price. But so what happened in that case probably was the firm she was working with got a work permit for someone to do the work because labor certified there was no one available to do the work. So the vicious circle goes on. So I think what I've tried to do today with, and hopefully if you'd like to ask me some questions, please feel free to do, is say, yes, your association needs to work with the government to find a way to interject where are professionals needed to be included when government mandates it, when they talk about it. And secondly, hopefully I've allayed your fears about the WTO accession. And thirdly, we need to work with immigration to train the industry so that we don't continually have to import numerous labor. I can understand 17 stories up there because I don't like heights myself. But when I come in this road in the morning, I see very few Bahamians crossing that road at 7 o'clock. You know, but yet we have people who don't want to work. So I've hoped for the afternoon I've been thought-provoking. I know after you've had your lunch you're ready to go on the school run or whatever. But hopefully if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. Thank you very much.
We have some questions from the floor. Okay, now Carlos, you had that mic quite a bit. We have one in back. Let's give somebody else a chance. And then we'll come back to you, Carlos. We won't leave you out. We like the questions.
Thank you, everyone. Albert Thompson from HT Christie. And I had a question with regards to the WTO. considering the trade war now between the United States and China and country, what is the benefit of a small country like the Bahamas joining the WTO?
You know, the great thing about great thing about H.G. Christie, I was in London at the financial service. They had an agent over there too, asking questions. I think we are the only country in the region and not a member of the WTO, some 95 members. The first question a lot of people ask is, well, President Trump says he's not going down that road. Why is the Bahamas going down that road? At any time between now and December 31st, 2019, we can stop the carnival and get off. So it's not a foregone conclusion the Bahamas will join the WTO. The majority of issues in the WTO, our manufacturing sector is about 5% of the economy. There was a company in Freeport that tried to export to Mexico. There's some WTO country said, hey, I produce whatever good it was, and they put a 200% duty, or whatever the rate was, on the Bahamian goods, and they became prohibitive. That would not be allowed under WTO. So the benefit on that issue would be that we would have access to markets. So as Brexit starts to come up, there's things like crawfish, pharmachem and their chemicals, and different industries we need to secure access to the market. So I hope that's answered your question. Anyone else?
Thanks. Is it significant enough in terms of our exports to warrant it, though?
You know, we have to face it. We're a service provider. 80% of our industry is tourism. 15% is financial services. By the time you get to that bottom issue, so let's take next door. And I remember when I was in cabinet when we did Atlantis, we tried to put on a high duty to protect, I think it was the mattress industry. The mattress industry at that point couldn't create or make 4,000 mattresses to fill a hotel. So they actually went and imported, I think it was mattresses, we got windows. They actually imported the mattresses and paid the higher duty. Chicken is one of the biggest issues, I suppose, our national dish almost. We produce X amount of chicken. We don't produce enough chicken to supply the demand. So yes, we try and protect the chicken farmer, but we also have the consumer who needs to get chicken at a relative rate. So these are the pros and cons, and we have to balance it. Now, what a lot of people may not accept is that a number of the industries that are here are under the Industry Encouragement Act, and they pay no duty on certain supplies. So plant, buildings. A good example, I think a person brought in a new, I'm going to call it a Butler building. You guys tell me the right name for it. Isn't that anyway? And said, and we're able to work and apply for duty-free concessions. So when we talk about industry, there's a lot of, we've done a tax study, and it's actually shown that we are foregoing a tremendous amount of duties and revenue by not, by the industry encouragement. So maybe a number of the industries here are being subsidized or benefiting from issues. So that's the balance we have to come up with WTO.
Minister, when you mentioned issuing work permits for metal dock workers, I couldn't resist the question. I'm an electrical contractor, first and foremost, and I just want to maybe offer a reason why that is the case. It's a little bit off point what we're talking about here, but I think it's important. We've got to have a mechanism in place in this country to train tradesmen. We don't have, I know there's an organization called BTVI, but we need to be able to train the tradesmen. And it's not only metal duct workers, I'm sure there's people who lay tiles, put in kitchen cabinets and all of that. So we need to, that BTVI has to be empowered to train people. I'm an electrical contractor, we struggle to find.
No question. And I think that was what I was throwing out to you. We have to find a way to empower, to train, whatever it is, to make sure that happens. You know, I've got electricians that are coming and working for trucking companies. You know, and I think what I'm trying to do today is, as many of you that know me, I'm trying to be, I'm always, but I'm being brutally frank. If we're going to succeed in employment, we need to find ways to train people. We spend a pile of money on UB. I think it is time we spend an equal amount of money in terms of the technical training, and also encourage people. My father was a farmer. Many of you know that. He struggled. He went to, you know, he put his shoes on when he got to this church and went to school. But he made something of his life. I think we have to encourage young Bahamians that they don't, you know, your profession and the building profession is a very profitable, meaningful, good business to be in. And I think we need to find a way to train them. I think we've fallen down badly.
Yeah, my question was going to kind of be in the same direction of what Quentin had mentioned, because being in your position, I'm sure you view all of the deficiencies that we have in these particular trades, and why aren't we structuring our educational program or our schooling system to fill these gaps, and rather than having students studying accounting and all the things where these trades, where these professions where they may be already saturated, and you know, and then persons are coming out and they're unemployed, all right, for significant periods. And I see a lot of young people come around, they just don't have any skill, but then you have a significant gap, and then so we're complaining, but then we see other persons filling those positions. Our education system should come in tandem with that knowledge, and we actually then build you know, we're building a workforce to meet the demand, rather than just having to then now employ that area. So I was gonna, that was part of my question. But another area is in the field that I actually do practice in, which is the field of architecture. And you asked the question, can government mandate whether the professionals, the local professionals are involved? And I have to look at, I suppose, when I do go into an environment, I can't walk into the United States and practice architecture. I can't do it. I have to identify a local entity, joint venture with them. We've done it, right? Where we've had local persons that had relationships with us for a period of years, and they were comfortable with our service, and the relationship developed, but they wanted to do a project in the United States, and so from the time that they identified that, we were respectful of the fact that that existed, and that we would then make contact with an international entity, joint venture, agree on a strategy on how that project would be developed, and then go forward, and the client has an understanding, and then how we would share that service. I can't see a developer necessarily, and I'm not sitting at the table. I do understand it's complex for us trying to invite that developer here and great for an investment, but I can't see how a developer could find that as an insult when it's practiced internationally, where there's a regulatory body that exists as professionals on how that service is to be received.
I think the issue is, I think we have to find a way to make that happen, and at what stage does it happen? So I think that's where I think we need to discuss more about when we get involved. Also, we need you as an organization to police the people who rubber stamp other people's plans.
Yeah, I have a comment in terms of the technical training. Comment was made about BTVI, so as chairman of BTVI board, I don't think I can let it pass. One of the things I want to say is, in fact, that's the direction we are going in. In fact, part of the challenges, and I think most of you in the technical area would have experienced it, in terms of the value that's seen to technical education, whereby most persons wanted to go to white collar route, they don't want to get a hand study, that kind of thing. So part of it is an educational aspect in terms of raising the profile of technical education, where in fact they can make more money and have better jobs than some of the jobs they do get, right? What we have also do, we have a number of what we call dual enrollment programs, whereby we engage in persons that in high school to be able to come in now and start some technical subjects to try and meet the skills gaps that you were talking about, right? We are also partnering with various industry in terms of interacting with them to find out, you know, what are the real needs and what are the real skill levels. Outside of the, I guess, electrical, plumbing, LPG, we have licensing. Part of the challenge is that persons go and work with someone for a couple of months, then sell themselves off as a professional when they're not properly trained, there's no level of certification and all that. So discussions, well, first of all, the contractors board hopefully would be able to address that aspect, right? So there's a lot of work that's taking place relative to that. This past fall, government would have initiated a scholarship program where persons interested in technical education can come in and enroll, provided they meet the requirements, and then get there. So it's not even whereby they get to put things in to try and facilitate that. So it is, in fact, a work in progress to be able to meet these needs. And we're open for input. Any industry where you see there's some weaknesses or need to try, let us know, and we will deal with it. Mention was also made of sheetrock, for example. One of the things we're finding is that gone are the days whereby there's continuous work with a particular skill.
Yeah.
So to try and focus on just one skill, and you may only need someone to do sheetrock for X amount of months or weeks, and similarly in terms of block laying, and then there's no work to do, to be able to train them to be able to deal that aspect. So to answer your question, there's a lot of work that's presently taking place, and I'm sure y'all could help us to meet that goal.
I also just
Sir
want
Ronaldo,
to,
please.
just before, I just want to get at a subject, unfortunately, the post between me and the director.
Yeah.
So when your firms have a slack period, and you decide to bid on a contract and purposely put it low because you want to maintain your skilled workers, I'm sure you've all done that. We need to also liaise with the Ministry of Works that if that bid comes in below the 10% spread they allow on bidding, that the Ministry of Works takes that under consideration as well. That's why I was glad the post was between us. Because certainly I know a number of you have said, look, I don't have any work at the moment, it's slow, I want to maintain my whatever trades they are, I will then build at cost or whatever. That we also have to recognize that issue too, and I'm sure some of you have done it, because you're quite right, there's not continual work. I didn't say that. I didn't say that. I said we have to make sure we work. But I think the point, Director, I was making is I don't think we should necessarily throw it out automatically if there is a legitimate issue, because I think we must know what your businesses are doing. Yeah. Yeah, but sometimes, if I was a cynical outsider, I would say that some firms win a lot more jobs than others, not necessarily from government, but just in general.
Well, some people know how to price properly.
We should go to the next question.
Good afternoon. I think some of the concerns of some of the people in this room would be a part of when the government, let's say, takes on one of these, finds a foreign investor to come in and they start a project. They bring their architect, they bring their engineer, and they get all of these things done. The problem is that most times Bahamians are just engaged as engineers of record, where if we were maybe utilized for like 50% of the project just in design, this room right here, right now, for some of these major projects, everyone in here might have a job or might be more engaged. There'd be more money flowing around because a lot of the money that is being made is in the design. And I think that's a part of the concerns we have as a body, that we're not being utilized as well as we could, and that a lot of the money that could be fluctuating around our economy is leaving. And another part of it is that a lot of these foreign firms don't adhere to our quality of standard. They come in, they provide work, and then we have to knock it back or critique it, or they fight back. And I mean, it just creates a problem when a Bahamian or a Bahamian company can do the work just as easily and get paid, and the government can collect its extra revenue more than just property tax and stamp taxes and things like that.
Yeah. No, just go ahead.
I want to add to what Ronaldo said, because you pointed to some projects nearby. And what we have experienced is that in a lot of cases, not every case, the designs being produced by the foreign consultants is far below par, okay? And they are getting paid a premium, right? But in a lot of cases, their graduate engineers are working on projects without supervision. And when we receive the drawings to review, we have to keep sending it back until they finally put an engineer on the job. Now, what has happened to my firm in particular is that sometimes the developer gets so frustrated with their foreign consultant that they ask us to take on some of the design work. And so, it evidences that we have something of value to offer, and that's why I come back to introduce us to them earlier.
And I think that's where that conversation has to go as a result of here. I don't want to, please don't take my, no, sorry, I've got time. I don't want to think that I'm favoring the other side. I'll use a different analogy. If I'm trying to encourage a bank to come here, the first thing they want to make sure is their CEO, their CFO, and their top management team come with them. So, for instance, if I was to bring Marriott, just to say, for the sake of discussion, they want some degree of comfort that their top people, maybe their top engineers, are with them as well. So I think we have to find a way to balance that. And I fully understand. Like, for instance, I think director can correct me if when the Chinese started to do another development, they were using 4 pieces of steel instead of 5 pieces of steel, or something along those lines, and we had to tell them, no, the Bahamas code does X. So I think I probably got the analogy wrong because I'm only a lawyer, but that's sort of what was happening. So you're right. We have to make sure that changes and you get involved.
So I'll move on to the next question, but I just want to say that we are not asking for the investor to not engage their engineer. Okay, go ahead.
Good afternoon.
We have to find
my name
that balance.
is Emil Leday. To follow what you're saying, Ms. Brown, it's not that we have a great deal to offer.
Mm-hmm.
We go to school, we compete with these individuals, we get licensed, and we come back home and we open up shop. We expect that you're going to look to our societies for professional consultation when developers come here. What happens so often is developers, foreign direct investors come here and they give a lot of good talk. Nothing ever happens. Montana development in Rumkey, over 400 acres, nothing. The Port St. George development, 950 acres in Long Island, nothing. Makewana, nothing. Cat Island, where the golf resort is supposed to be, next to nothing. I wouldn't even talk about Freeport. What I'm getting at is, Minister, is that a lot of us in here, we have more ability in development than these people who come here, I'm telling you, I'm not even asking you. They can hold a pimple to what we are able to do. We must find a way for Bahamians to get access to capital to develop this country. That's one of the major issues there. There's money that's all around, but why is it so difficult to get capital for us to develop our country? That's what I'd like to know. And to speak to you here, gentlemen, Mrs. Gilbert, Mr. Thompson, the World Trade Organization is not a bad thing. Once we know we're not budging, we have to benefit. We compete with everything else in the world here, We have people that grow chicken. In fact, I don't buy any imported meat. I go to Bahamian producers of chicken, pork, goat, and lamb. I eat fresh, right? Because it's healthier. So, and if, let's say that there's 1 million acres of agricultural land. If we're using 10,000 acres of that, that's plenty. So for us, in terms of developing our country, the sky is really the limit. It's just the way that we're going to plan to do it. But to go back to the minister from here, and what you're noticing all over the country is Bahamians are dialing it up. This BEAPP today is just the start of turning up the heat, because we expect better. And we're going to make sure that we get better from you all. Thank you.
I think that's a fair comment. And I hope today we doesn't just end up another one of these things where a number of ministers come up and spout and disappear and nothing happens. Sorry, I mean, give a very nice speech and then disappear. So I think the challenge we come out of this afternoon is to carry on this dialogue with the people you need to do, to find that balance between where we have to go. You mentioned the various projects that are not being, go nowhere, and then there are numerous ones. One of the things that the government intends to do with Bahamas Investment Authority is it's currently undergoing an IDB grant with the whole question of ramping BIA up so that we will actually have a promotional arm with a budget, sort of like in Jam Pro or one of those, that will go around the world and market the Bahamas, not in tourism, not in financial services, but in direct foreign investment. They'll have a stronger arm for looking at projects and also evaluating them, but also hopefully on managing and following up on approvals that are given to make sure A, they're done, and B, they are being done in the way they said they were going to be. So people can't just come and get approval and then go around the world and sell it off. So we hope to be able to do that. On the question of a lot of land you mentioned, the government's doing a land audit at the moment to find out what land it actually owns, where it is, who's using it. So they hope that we'll be able to convert that into more productive land where Bahamians can have use of that asset that's greatest to all of us, is that's land. So I hope, yeah. Sorry? Yeah, it's actually, the Crown land audit is being done at the moment. It's being done internally. Yeah. Okay, and that's best I know it's being done internally. I'll double check, don't I thought it was being done internally. But there was a recent internal issue that was done where actually government went out and assessed the buildings they own in this town. And that group reported to Cabinet on Tuesday, I was out of town, to show what buildings the government owns. For instance, let's choose with a post office. That's a good one just to sit off on. The Clarence Bain building, you know, or a number of them. There's buildings that the government owns that can be monetized and used to different reasons. So we've actually started that, and that is an internal one. But I'll check on the Crown land. I think so.
No more questions.
Hey, don't take this last one.
Okay.
You can try.
Last one.
Good afternoon, Mr. Simonet. Albrion Simonet. My question is to your comment. You mentioned that when a foreign direct investor comes, they would sit with the realtor would introduce them to a lawyer so they can get the legal process going. Now my question is, how can we get the realtor to introduce them also to the architect and the engineer in the same vein when they introduce them to the lawyer?
Very good one.
Mhm.
BEAPP, whatever that thing, BEAPP, has to then say one of their objectives is to go and meet with BREA, which is the Bahamas Real Estate Association, to make sure you, H.G. Christie would be a good example, go and see Johnny or any Albert or any of their agents, say, this is the process. I mean, I know when I was in my private in real estate, banks were always coming to real estate agents to say, hey, look, we loan money. So I think that's probably the next phase to be able to go into. Plus, you have to become, which was Keith's comment, and I think he's going to catch his plane home, you have to be better cops of your own industry as well, so that you're onto these projects come up to make sure.
We'll allow the last question to go to Ms. Hannah.
And I'm sure all the ministers that were here and the government officials that were here, they have email addresses. Most of it's Brent Simonet at bahamas.gov.bs, and I'm sure everyone else. So please feel free to email any of us, any of my colleague ministers, and I'll, by extension, say the other officials here.
Good afternoon. I must say I've never heard the softer side of you. But I think this approach was good, and I'm sure each one of our associations would love to have you. I'm the Vice President of the Bahamian Contractors Association, and I'd like to wrap up our meeting. We all have something in common, and I think the government has to actually make this to happen for all of our associations. We all would like to sit at that table from hello. And I understand, and when I say hello, I mean from when the call comes in to, we'd like to come to talk to the Bahamas about possibly building anything, something, what do we have to do? We have been instructed that we have to write to somebody to make that request, and then it also has to go into the government portal, or it has to be made public in order for you all to say, okay, this is the demand for doing business in the Bahamas. The outset of this is that once the association writes, it means that even the Chamber of Commerce, every president or leader of, let's say, the engineers, the architects, the builders, Chamber of Commerce, any lead line person from every profession in the Bahamas that needs to say hello with you on day one, that we would like to be in that room.
Okay. Actually, I'd like all of you to come and work with me for a day so you can see our frustrations. But no, I think we have to, I'm not one for bureaucracy, so I'll leave on this comment. If there's anything I've raised today that you want to further, please just pick up the phone, email me. Email is better because you'll always get me that way, and I'll respond to it and we'll try and get it done. I work very closely with Desmond Bannister. He and I go way back. We're very good friends and political colleagues. And I know the frustrations he goes through on a daily basis at the Ministry of Works and trying to get projects approved and on their way. We want to try and find a way to get beyond this bureaucracy and make sure it works for all Bahamians. And I think we have to do that collectively. As we said with BTVI, we have to make sure we work on that. And hopefully, starting today, we'll find a brighter 2019. Thank you very much.
Okay.